The house was always quiet in the early mornings, wrapped in that soft golden light that made everything feel slower, gentler. Daniel loved those minutes, the kettle humming, the wooden floor warm under his feet, the faint breeze slipping through the curtains. And every morning, without fail, Max was already awake. The old golden retriever sat by the living room window, his posture calm yet purposeful. Not alert, not anxious, simply present, as if he were waiting for something only he understood. His tail moved once, a slow, warm thump against the rug, when Daniel entered the room. "Again, buddy?" Daniel whispered with a soft smile. Max didn't look away from the window. His ears lifted, his breathing steady, his gaze fixed on the quiet street outside. There was nothing unusual out there, just the neighbors leaving for work, couples walking their kids to school, the occasional cyclist rolling past. But Max watched it all with a serene focus that felt almost meaningful. At first, Daniel found it cute. Then, comforting. Max had always been intuitive, but this felt different. Every morning, same place, same quiet devotion. The way Max's chest rose and fell, the way his eyes softened, the way his body leaned ever so slightly forward, as if drawn to something beyond the glass, it all carried a gentle sort of longing. Daniel crouched beside him one morning, feeling an unexpected warmth gather in his chest. "What are you looking for, boy?" Max exhaled softly, almost like an answer, calm, steady, knowing. There was something beautiful in the dog's stillness, something Daniel couldn't yet understand. And what Max sensed would change everything. The house always woke slowly. Soft light slid across the hardwood floor. The kettle hummed in the kitchen. And the gentle rustle of curtains floated with the early breeze, a quiet kind of music that Daniel had grown to love. He stretched, rubbed his hands over his face, and stepped into the hallway, feet touching the warm floorboards he never really noticed until recently. Morning felt different these days. Calmer. Softer. Almost like the house itself was learning to breathe again. But the real reason the mornings carried that softness sat quietly by the living room window. Max. Daniel reached the doorway and paused, just watching him for a moment. The golden retriever sat perfectly still, posture relaxed yet purposeful. His amber fur caught the sunlight the way wheat fields do at dawn, warm, glowing, gentle. Every morning. Same time. Same spot. Max didn't turn his head, but his tail moved once at a slow, affectionate thump. Daniel smiled. "Morning, buddy." Max stayed focused on whatever lay beyond the glass. He wasn't tense. He wasn't alert. He wasn't waiting for danger. It was something softer, something intentional. Daniel stepped into the room, the floor giving a faint creak beneath his weight. That creak always made Max's ears perk slightly, never fully turning, just acknowledging. The dog's breathing was steady. Calm. Almost meditative. Daniel crouched beside him. The window pane glowed with early light as the neighborhood outside moved in its slow morning rhythm. A man walking his beagle. Kids climbing into the school bus. A woman jogging in a bright blue hoodie. Cars easing down the street in polite procession. Nothing unusual. Nothing tense. Just a normal street in a normal town. Yet Max watched it with a quiet devotion that felt deeper than routine. Daniel rested a hand on Max's back, fingers brushing through warm fur. Max leaned into the touch for a breath, then returned to his focus. "You've been doing this for weeks now," Daniel murmured softly. "What's so special out there?" Max exhaled a slow, gentle sigh that almost sounded like a thought. Daniel stayed quiet for a moment, letting the stillness settle. There was something about mornings like this, the slow pace, the peaceful light, the softness in Max's posture. It all made Daniel feel grounded in a way he hadn't felt in months. He wasn't lonely, not exactly, but life had grown quiet. Too quiet. Work, home, sleep, repeat. No surprises. No spark. But Max. Max brought warmth back into the silence. Daniel took a seat on the rug beside him, pulling one knee up. "You know, most dogs beg for food first thing, he whispered with a faint chuckle. You act like a little philosopher watching the sunrise. Max's tail tapped again. Daniel's phone buzzed in the kitchen, a reminder for something he didn't actually care about. The sound didn't break the moment. If anything, it made the quiet of the living room feel even more intentional, like this space belonged to a slower world. Outside, a neighbor waved as he backed out of his driveway. Max watched him go with calm eyes. Not excitement. Not concern. Just recognition? Something gentle. Daniel followed Max's gaze, trying to see whatever the dog saw. You've got secrets, huh? Daniel said softly. Max shifted slightly, only slightly, his weight leaning a hair forward. Not enough to look eager. More like anticipation woven with memory. Daniel didn't understand it, not yet. But he felt it. Something was going on behind those calm eyes. The kettle clicked off in the kitchen. Daniel didn't move. Instead, he stayed right there with Max, appreciating the quiet, the warmth, the way the sun lifted over the houses across the street and cast a gold wash over everything. Max lowered his head for a moment, resting his chin lightly against the windowsill, a gesture so gentle Daniel felt something in his chest soften. He whispered, "You're thinking about something." Max lifted his head again. Daniel searched the dog's face, trying to read it the way Max always seemed to read him. Max had this way of knowing when Daniel was overwhelmed, or tired, or quietly sad. The dog had comforted him on days when no one else even noticed. It made perfect sense that Max might have feelings he couldn't express, longings he couldn't put into words. Still, this morning ritual was new. New, and full of quiet meaning. Daniel rose slowly and sat on the nearby couch, letting Max continue his vigil. He didn't want to interrupt. Didn't want to pull Max away from whatever this was. Instead, he watched his dog with a warm, strange affection, as if he were witnessing something private, something gentle and beautiful. The street outside remained peaceful. The house felt clearer, brighter, lighter. And Max's stillness held its own kind of story. One Daniel hadn't yet learned to read. Daniel leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, voice soft and almost thoughtful. Whatever you're looking for. I hope it's something good. Max gave a quiet exhale. A warm one. A knowing one. Daniel didn't understand it yet. But the meaning behind Max's quiet ritual was already beginning to unfold piece by gentle piece in the soft light of a simple morning. A meaning more beautiful than he could ever imagine. The next morning arrived the same way, soft light drifting through the blinds, gentle warmth spreading across the floor, and the quiet hum of a day that hadn't fully woken yet. Daniel stepped into the hallway with a mug in hand, still sleepy, still settling into the rhythm of a new sunrise. The floor creaked under his heel, and somewhere in the living room, something shifted. He already knew what it was. Max was awake before him again. Daniel reached the doorway and stopped, almost on instinct, letting the moment settle before stepping closer. There he was. Max sat at the window with that same peaceful posture, relaxed shoulders, calm breathing, tail tucked softly around his side. The sunlight touched his fur in the gentlest way, turning every strand into warm gold. Just like yesterday. And the day before. And the day before that. Daniel felt something like déjà vu, but warmer. A familiarity that wrapped around him like a soft blanket. "You're early again, buddy," Daniel said quietly. Max didn't look back, but his ears lifted a little. A silent greeting. The neighborhood outside moved slowly, like a calm painting coming to life. A man across the street watered his lawn. A couple walked their toddler toward daycare. A bicycle bell rang somewhere down the block. Normal moments. Soft moments. But Max watched them as if they mattered. Daniel sipped his coffee, letting the warmth settle in his chest. He leaned on the doorframe and studied the dog with a thoughtful frown, not troubled, just curious. Max wasn't anxious, wasn't restless, wasn't barking or pacing. He wasn't reacting to noise or movement. He was simply present. Deeply present. "All right," Daniel murmured. "Let's see what you're up to." He crossed the room and sat on the rug beside Max, just like he had the day before. The rug felt cool beneath him. Max felt warm beside him, and the house felt as if it were holding its breath in a gentle, comfortable way. Daniel placed a hand on Max's side. "You know," he whispered, "if someone saw us right now, they'd think you were waiting for the morning news." Max's tail thumped once. Daniel smiled. But beneath the humor was something else, a quiet weight. A question he couldn't quite name. He watched the street through the glass. Nothing unusual. Nothing out of place. Still, something tugged at him. He had noticed small things before: Max sitting at this window every morning, at almost the exact same time. The posture. The patience. The soft, almost emotional stillness. But today it struck him differently. Clearer. More intentional. A pattern. "Are you waiting for someone?" Daniel murmured. Max's body shifted an inch, barely noticeable, but enough for Daniel to feel it through his hand. A subtle lean forward. And again, that soft exhale. A warm breath. A knowing one. Daniel let his gaze soften. "You don't do this at any other time of day," he said quietly. "Just mornings." It made him wonder. Dogs remembered more than people believed. Dogs held emotions in ways humans often overlooked. Dogs carried connections, silently, faithfully. Maybe Max was remembering something, or someone. Daniel rubbed the dog's back slowly. Max leaned into the touch for half a second, then resumed his gentle focus. "Okay," Daniel whispered. "We'll watch together." Minutes passed. Slow. Comfortable. The street grew busier. Cars rolled by, windows fogged from the cool air. A mail truck moved down the block, its engine low and steady. Max didn't react to any of it. He wasn't following movement. He wasn't tracking sound. He was watching something more specific, something consistent. Daniel felt a small tug of emotion he didn't fully understand. Not worry. Not sadness. Just curiosity mixed with tenderness. Max had always been intuitive. But this? This was different. Daniel lowered his mug and set it on the floor beside him. "You're not just watching the street," he said softly. "You're waiting." Max's ears shifted again. Not perked in surprise. Not lowered in fear. Just soft. Attentive. Daniel felt his chest warm, the kind of warmth that comes from noticing something meaningful, even if you don't yet know what it is. He rested his chin lightly on his knee and kept watching through the window. The morning sun reached a little higher, brushing the sky with pale gold, and the breeze outside carried the faintest scent of fresh-cut grass. The world felt calm. And Max felt connected to it. Daniel breathed out slowly. "You know, I used to think you liked sleeping in," he said with a quiet smile. Max gave another gentle exhale, almost like a soft laugh. Daniel shifted closer, shoulder brushing Max's side. "That's the thing about you," he continued. "You always know what matters. Even when I don't." There was no answer, of course. Only Max's steady breathing, that calm presence, that subtle, emotional focus. Daniel let the silence stretch, the good kind of silence. The kind that felt full, not empty. Another minute passed. Still nothing unusual outside. And yet, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Max was seeing something unusual. Something Daniel couldn't see. Not yet. He closed his eyes briefly, just breathing with Max, letting the moment settle. When he opened them again, Max was still sitting there, same gentle posture, same golden glow in the morning sun, same steady gaze. Daniel whispered, "Okay, buddy. I'm listening now." And for the first time, he truly meant it. Morning came quietly again. Soft light touched the curtains. The house breathed in a slow, peaceful rhythm. And Daniel, half awake, already knew where Max would be. He stepped into the hallway with a quiet yawn, rubbing sleep from his eyes. There was no rush. No noise. Just the warm hum of early sunlight filling the air. As he reached the living room, he didn't even look toward the kitchen. His gaze went straight to the window. Max was there. Same calm posture. Same steady breathing. Same soft warmth in the way he held himself, attentive, but without tension. Daniel paused in the doorway, the scene hitting him with a kind of emotional familiarity he hadn't expected. It felt comforting. Reassuring. Like Max was anchoring the mornings with something gentle and meaningful. Daniel whispered, "You beat me again." Max's ears lifted a tiny movement, almost shy, before settling back into their relaxed state. Daniel crossed the room and sat beside him on the rug, choosing the same spot as before. He didn't want to sit anywhere else. It felt right here. Right next to Max. For a few moments, he simply watched him. The rise and fall of Max's chest. The warm gleam in his fur as sunlight gathered around him. The softness in his eyes, focused, but not strained. It wasn't the stare of a guard dog. It wasn't the stare of excitement. It was emotional. Daniel rested his arms on his knees. "You really care about whatever's out there," he murmured. Max didn't move, but there was an unmistakable shift inside him, a tiny breath, a tiny lean, a quiet energy Daniel could feel through the closeness of their bodies. Daniel followed Max's gaze out the window. People passed by, one by one. A jogger. A child pulling her backpack higher. A dog walker with a little terrier. A delivery truck rolling gently down the street. And Max didn't react to any of them. Not even with curiosity. He wasn't scanning the street. He was waiting for something specific. Daniel's chest tightened a little, not in fear, just in realization. "Okay," he whispered softly. "There's something more here." Max's tail brushed the rug once. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The breeze outside lifted the corner of a newspaper left on a porch, sunlight hitting the pages in a glimmer of white. The whole scene looked peaceful, almost too normal. But Max's gaze had depth. Weight. Memory. Daniel could feel it, that subtle intuition dogs were famous for, multiplied by something more. He spoke quietly. "You've always been close to people, Max. But this feels different." Max gave a soft breath. Not a sigh. Not a huff. Something in between, a warm exhale that carried emotion. Daniel rested his hand gently on Max's back. Max leaned into it for a long moment. Then he eased forward again, eyes soft, ears relaxed. "All right," Daniel said. "Show me what you're seeing." He didn't expect an answer. But Max gave one anyway, the only way a dog could. Max shifted. Just a small movement. Barely a weight change. But Daniel felt it, witnessed it, and understood it wasn't random. Max had adjusted his body toward a very specific direction, slightly left, toward the corner of the street where the sidewalk curved around a row of maple trees. Daniel's heartbeat slowed. He followed Max's gaze, searching for anything, a person, a car, a familiar figure. But there was nothing there. Just sunlight on pavement. Just a street waking up. Still. Max stayed focused on that one spot. Daniel whispered, "You're remembering something." Max's ears lifted, soft, steady, emotional. The moment deepened. Daniel breathed out. "You know, when I first got you, the shelter told me you were gentle. Patient. Kind. They never said you were a morning philosopher." Max's tail brushed the rug again, warm, slow, meaningful. Daniel chuckled under his breath. But then the laughter softened, because he felt it, a quiet pull inside himself, mirroring Max's own stillness. Max wasn't restless. Max wasn't wandering. Max was locked onto a memory. Or a person. Or a feeling. Something from before Daniel. Something Max carried in silence. Daniel's voice dropped into a soft, honest tone. "Hey! I'm here. If you're missing someone, you can tell me. In your way." Max leaned his head against Daniel's thigh for half a second. A soft gesture. A warm one. Then he lifted his gaze again and returned to the window. Daniel swallowed the small ache in his chest. Dogs felt things deeply. Most people never realized how deeply. He whispered, "We'll figure it out together." Max gave a tiny exhale, almost like agreement. And the morning moved on. Cars passed. Children waved goodbye to parents. Neighbors nodded at each other. But Daniel wasn't watching them anymore. He was watching Max, the way his eyes softened, the way his breathing steadied, the way his entire presence seemed connected to something beyond simple routine. The dog's intuition wasn't fading. It was growing. Daniel felt it. Something beautiful was forming. Something gentle and emotional, like a story unfolding without words. He leaned closer. "Who are you waiting for, Max?" The dog didn't answer. He didn't need to. His stillness, his quiet focus, his lingering warmth. All of it said, "There is meaning here." And Daniel, for the first time, was ready to see it. Daniel woke earlier than usual the next morning. Not because of an alarm. Not because of noise. But because something inside him wanted to be awake before Max took his place at the window. He stretched, pulled on a sweater, and walked softly down the hallway. The house felt still, quiet in that warm, familiar way. The kind of quiet that invited thought rather than loneliness. Daniel turned into the living room. And smiled. Max was already there. Sitting in the exact same spot. Same posture. Same soft presence. The morning light hadn't even fully brightened yet, but Max didn't need it. He was already watching, already connecting, already grounded in that mysterious, gentle purpose only dogs seem to understand. Daniel walked over without speaking. He wanted to feel the moment exactly as it was. He sat down beside Max, lowering himself slowly onto the rug. He didn't want to disturb anything, not Max's breath, not the rhythm of the morning, not the quiet bond settling between them. For a long moment, Daniel simply breathed with him. Warm light. Quiet room. Soft air drifting through the window's edge. "Okay," Daniel whispered eventually. "Let's try something different today." Max's ear flicked in acknowledgement. Daniel leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. He wasn't just observing anymore. He was participating, choosing to share this ritual rather than question it from a distance. "Tell me something, buddy," Daniel murmured. "What are you feeling when you sit here?" Max didn't move. But Daniel felt something subtle in the way his chest rose, a warm, steady breath that carried emotion. Daniel nodded to himself. "You've got memories in there, don't you?" Another soft exhale. The soft mystery that had started as curiosity now tugged at Daniel's heart in a different way. He wasn't trying to decode Max like a puzzle anymore. He wanted to understand him quietly, patiently, without forcing anything. The street outside began its gentle morning shift. A cyclist pedaled past. A man jogged by in an orange sweatshirt. A delivery truck rolled along. But Max didn't respond to movement. He was looking past all of it. Toward the same quiet corner of the block as before, where the sidewalk curved under the maple trees. Daniel followed his gaze carefully. Nothing. But Max's eyes stayed soft, focused, listening to something deeper, a feeling only he seemed to sense. Daniel lowered his voice. "Is it someone you knew?" Max breathed in gently, then out. Daniel didn't know why, but the answer felt like yes. He shifted his position, sitting a little closer, shoulder brushing Max's side. For a moment, Max leaned into him, a soft, warm contact, before turning his attention forward again. Daniel whispered, "You've been teaching me something these past few days, haven't you?" Max's tail brushed the rug in that slow, warm tap. Daniel let the moment breathe. The light changed. Shadows softened. The soft glow of sunrise spread across the street. Something in Daniel's chest loosened, like he was finally seeing the world at Max's pace instead of his own. "You know," Daniel said, voice quieter now, "I haven't slowed down like this in a long time." Max didn't move. But Daniel knew he heard him. Life got loud, Daniel continued softly. Even on quiet days. He rubbed his thumb gently over Max's fur. But sitting here with you, I feel calm. You make everything make sense even when I don't know why. Max's body shifted slightly, not in excitement, but in contentment. Daniel smiled, faint and sincere. Maybe this morning thing isn't about the street at all, he said. Maybe it's about connection. Max gave a gentle exhale, one of those quiet, warm breaths Daniel was learning to read like words. Yeah, Daniel murmured. I'm starting to get it. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. Max didn't flinch. An early bus groaned around the corner. Max didn't blink. The world moved, but Max stayed still. Still, but emotionally awake. Daniel followed his gaze again, to that same corner. This time, Daniel let his attention linger there a little longer. He didn't expect answers. He didn't need them. He just wanted to understand. Whoever you're thinking about, Daniel said softly, they must mean a lot to you. Max's ear lifted slightly, then settled. Daniel leaned back on his hands, letting the soft carpet and warm sunlight hold him in place. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was simply present. With Max. With the moment. With whatever quiet mystery was unfolding. And for the first time, he felt grateful for not knowing everything yet. Mystery could be beautiful too. All right, Daniel whispered. We'll keep watching together. Max leaned gently against his side, a gesture filled with trust. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, breathed, and opened them again just as the morning light reached its softest glow. And in that calm stillness, in that shared silence, something shifted inside Daniel. Not a realization. Not a discovery. Just a quiet readiness. A readiness to learn Max's story not through words, but through moments like this. Moments filled with warmth, intuition, and a dog's gentle, unwavering heart. The next morning felt different before Daniel even reached the living room. Maybe it was the air a little cooler, carrying that early day freshness he always loved. Maybe it was the sunlight, softer, more golden than usual, brushing the hallway walls in warm shades. Or maybe it was the quiet pull in Daniel's chest. A quiet sense that today, something new might unfold. He stepped into the living room. And of course, Max was already there. Sitting tall. Breathing steady. Warm fur glowing where the sun touched it. Daniel smiled gently as he walked over. You never miss a morning, do you? Max's tail thumped once, that slow, affectionate tap Daniel had come to love. Daniel sat beside him, careful not to disturb the dog's calm focus. He rested one arm on his knee and let his eyes drift over the street outside. The neighborhood moved in its usual rhythm. The jogger in blue passed by again. A man in a gray hoodie walked his terrier. Parents hurried children toward a minivan. Normal moments. Warm moments. But Daniel could feel deep in his gut that today held something different. Max exhaled quietly. Daniel's attention sharpened. What is it, buddy? He whispered. Max's body shifted only slightly, but enough for Daniel to notice. The dog's ears softened into the gentle forward tilt he only used when something tugged at his heart. Daniel followed his gaze. At first, he saw nothing. Just a line of maple trees, sunlight flickering through the leaves, a quiet breeze lifting bits of pollen into the air. Then, a small figure appeared around the curve of the sidewalk. An elderly woman. Walking slowly. Hand resting on a small cane. Gray coat, soft scarf, quiet steps. Nothing alarming. Nothing intense. Just gentle. Max's posture changed. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just a soft transformation. His chest lifted slightly, his tail brushed the rug, and his eyes softened in a way Daniel hadn't seen before. Daniel blinked. Oh, he murmured. You know her. Max didn't move except for one slow, warm wag of his tail. The woman walked with the grace of someone who had lived a long, full life, steady, thoughtful, peaceful. She paused once near the maple tree, adjusting her scarf, then continued down the sidewalk. As she passed in front of the house, Max's breathing shifted a tiny, emotional hitch that Daniel felt through the air beside him. The dog wasn't excited. He wasn't anxious. He was remembering. Daniel whispered, "She's the one, isn't she?" Max's ear lifted. The woman didn't look at the house. Didn't look at the window. Didn't look at Max. But Max watched her with a tenderness Daniel could feel. A memory lived in that gaze. A softness. A connection that went beyond routine. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Is this why you sit here every morning?" he asked quietly. "Because you're waiting for her?" Max didn't turn his head, but his tail brushed the rug again. A confirmation. A quiet yes. Daniel's chest warmed, then tightened. It wasn't jealousy, or worry, or confusion. It was something deeper. More human. He whispered, "She must have been someone important to you." Max breathed out, slow, steady, meaningful. The woman walked past the house and continued down the sidewalk until she disappeared around the next curve. Only then did Max's posture ease, not collapse, not stop caring, just soften. As if the moment he had waited for had passed, and now he could rest again. Daniel let his voice drop into a gentle tone. "That was the first time you reacted like that." Max blinked slowly. Daniel rubbed the dog's back. "And it wasn't just recognition," he added softly. "That was affection." Max leaned against him for a brief, warm second. Then turned back toward the window as if committing the moment to memory. Daniel felt a small ache behind his ribs, the kind that came with understanding something emotional, even if the whole story was invisible yet. He glanced at Max. "You miss her," he whispered. "Whoever she is, she mattered." Max didn't blink. Didn't shift. Didn't sigh. He simply was present, emotional, connected. Daniel looked toward the sidewalk again, though the woman was long gone. He thought about Max's past, the part he didn't know much about. The part that existed before the shelter. Before the adoption papers. Before their quiet life together. Everyone carries memories. Even dogs. Daniel's throat tightened a little. "Hey," he said gently. "We'll find out. I promise." Max finally turned his head, just a little, and pressed his cheek against Daniel's knee. A gesture that said everything. A gesture that said thank you, and I remember, and it's okay. Daniel rested his hand over Max's head. The street settled into calm again. Birds perched on the power line. Sunlight warmed the pavement. The hum of the morning softened into a peaceful rhythm. But inside the living room, something had changed. The mystery had taken its first gentle shape. And Daniel understood something he hadn't before. Max wasn't simply watching mornings go by. He was waiting patiently, faithfully, lovingly. For someone who once meant the world to him. And now Daniel felt ready to learn the rest of the story, at Max's pace, in Max's way. One beautiful moment at a time. Daniel woke up the next morning with a different kind of awareness. Not curiosity. Not confusion. Something softer, something almost protective. He wanted to understand Max's world. Not from a distance, from right beside him. He moved through the hallway quietly, not wanting to break the peaceful stillness of the early hour. But when he turned into the living room, Max was already awake. Already sitting at the window. Already carrying that calm, emotional presence like a gentle lantern in the dim morning light. Daniel smiled to himself. "You really are the earliest riser I know," he whispered. Max's tail tapped once, slow, warm. Daniel sat beside him on the rug, the same way he had each day. But today, he felt different. He felt ready to finally understand what Max had been trying to show him through silence. The neighborhood outside moved slowly. The usual joggers passed by. A man walked his terrier. The same early bus rumbled down the street. But Max didn't react to any of it. His eyes were focused, soft, purposeful on that same curve of sidewalk under the maple trees. Daniel followed his gaze. The woman wasn't there yet. But Max already felt her coming. Daniel breathed out softly. "You know her," he murmured. "You really know her." Max gave the faintest sigh, warm, steady, full of memory. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, watching the street through Max's eyes instead of his own. And in that moment, Daniel felt something shift inside him. Max wasn't just remembering someone. He was honoring someone. Someone important. Someone from before Daniel. Someone who still meant something to Max. The idea tightened Daniel's chest in a gentle, human way. He whispered, "She was part of your life, wasn't she?" Max's ear lifted slightly, a soft yes. Minutes passed. Quiet. Warm. Meaningful. Then, from the corner of the street, the elderly woman appeared again. Same slow steps. Same gray coat. Same peaceful presence. But today, Daniel watched Max instead of watching her. The change began in Max's eyes, a soft brightening, like sunlight warming from inside. Then his posture shifted, subtle, emotional, not eager, but open. Then his breathing changed, not faster, just fuller, deeper. Daniel felt it. Max wasn't merely recognizing her. He was feeling her. "Max," Daniel whispered, voice softening to something like awe. "You love someone connected to her." Max's body leaned forward just a fraction, the gentlest pull of emotion guiding him. The woman's steps were slow, steady. She paused briefly near the maple tree, adjusting her scarf, just like before. But Daniel looked closely this time. Her coat was worn in a familiar way. Her scarf looked handmade, soft and frayed at the edges. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from age. She had the look of someone who had lived a meaningful life. Someone who had loved deeply. Someone who had lost, too. And Max. Max was remembering all of it. The woman walked past the front of Daniel's house, unaware of the quiet connection watching her from the window. The moment she passed, Max exhaled. A soft sound. A sound filled with tenderness. A sound so emotional that Daniel felt it deep in his chest. He swallowed gently. "This is personal for you, isn't it?" Max leaned his head against Daniel's knee, eyes still watching the place where the woman's figure was disappearing down the street. It was a gesture of trust. A gesture of sharing. A gesture that said, "I want you to understand this with me." Daniel placed a warm hand on Max's back. "I promise," he whispered, "I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together." Max closed his eyes for a brief, peaceful second. And Daniel felt something settle inside him. A soft clarity. A quiet truth. This wasn't just a ritual. This wasn't just intuition. This was love. Memory. Devotion carried across years and changing homes and shifting lives. Max wasn't waiting for excitement. He wasn't waiting for playtime. He was waiting to witness someone who had shaped his heart. The woman. Whoever she truly was, she mattered. The morning light deepened, brushing the room in warm gold. Daniel took a slow breath and let his voice soften to a whisper. "You love someone in your old family, someone connected to her." Max's tail moved once, the softest, warmest confirmation. "That's why you sit here," Daniel continued quietly. "You're not longing for the past, you're honoring it." Max pressed his head lightly into Daniel's hand. A gesture full of gratitude, and something deeper. Something that felt like trust. Daniel breathed in and looked at his dog, really looked at him. "You're teaching me more about love," he whispered, "than most people ever have." The moment sat between them, warm, steady, alive with quiet meaning. Outside, the woman was gone. But inside the room, her presence lingered through Max's gentle emotion. And Daniel understood. The bond Max carried wasn't fading. It was guiding him towards something beautiful. Something Daniel was finally ready to see. Morning arrived with a softness that made the whole house feel like it was breathing calm air. Daniel woke easily, without an alarm, as if something inside him knew today would matter. He stepped into the hallway, listened to the stillness, then walked slowly toward the living room. Max was already there. But this time, Daniel didn't sit beside him right away. He stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the scene with quiet awareness, the warm glow of sunlight on Max's fur, the steady rise and fall of his breathing, the gentle tilt of his ears toward the window. This wasn't a mystery anymore. This was devotion. Daniel whispered, "You ready, buddy?" Max gave a soft thump of his tail. Daniel walked over and sat beside him on the rug. He followed Max's gaze toward the familiar curve in the sidewalk under the maple trees. And then he said words he had been holding for days. "I think it's time I meet her." Max shifted slightly, not excitedly, not anxiously. Just a gentle acknowledgement. Almost like permission. Daniel smiled faintly and exhaled. "Let's see where this goes." The morning unfolded in its usual rhythm. People walked their dogs. Kids hurried toward school. Cars rolled softly down the street. But Daniel wasn't watching them. He was waiting. Max's posture stayed steady, the same quiet anticipation Daniel had witnessed all week. Then, finally, footsteps appeared around the corner. The elderly woman. Same warm coat. Same slow steps. Same peaceful presence. Max lifted his head a little higher, his eyes softening in that unmistakable way, not excitement, not longing, something gentler. Recognition. Affection. Memory. Daniel felt it in his chest again, the gentle ache mixed with warmth. "Okay, boy," Daniel murmured. "Let's go." He placed a hand on Max's collar. Max stood slowly, calmly, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. Daniel opened the front door, and the cool morning air washed through the house. Max stepped out first, not rushing, just moving with purpose. Together, they walked toward the sidewalk. Daniel held Max's leash loosely, giving him space. He watched the woman's steady steps and felt his heart pick up a little. Not with nerves, but with meaning. As they got closer, Max's tail lifted slightly, the softest wag, full of emotion. Daniel called out gently, "Excuse me, ma'am?" The woman turned, stopping her steps with a delicate pause. Her eyes were the kind of eyes that carried years of life, years of stories, years of quiet strength. "Yes," she said in a soft voice. Daniel reached her with Max beside him, who sat down politely as if he had been trained for moments exactly like this. "I'm sorry to bother you," Daniel said, "but I think my dog recognizes you." The woman looked down at Max. Her breath hitched. Not fear. Not surprise. A quiet, emotional recognition. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh my goodness." She knelt slowly, carefully, and Max leaned forward with that gentle familiarity Daniel had seen each morning through the window. The woman placed a trembling hand on Max's face. "I know you," she breathed. "Oh, sweetheart. I know you." Daniel's heart tightened. "You do?" The woman nodded, eyes watering softly. "This dog," she said, stroking Max's fur with tender, aging hands. "He belonged to my husband. Before he passed." Daniel felt the world slow. Every sound softened. Every breath felt deeper. Max pressed his forehead gently to the woman's knee, a gesture filled with remembrance. I didn't know," Daniel whispered. The woman smiled through her emotion. "My husband adored him. Max was his shadow. They went everywhere together." She ran her fingers through Max's fur, her voice trembling with warmth. "When my husband got sick, Max stayed by his side every day. And when he passed, our family, we were all grieving. Someone thought Max should go to a shelter, just until things got settled." She looked at Daniel, voice softening. "I always wondered where he ended up." Daniel swallowed. "I adopted him a few months later," he said gently. "He's been my best friend ever since." The woman smiled, a soft, emotional smile that carried both sadness and beauty. "He's a good boy," she whispered. "A very good boy." Max lifted his head, resting it lightly in her hands. Daniel watched the reunion with a sense of reverence. This was the truth behind the mornings. The meaning behind Max's stillness. The reason for his soft anticipation at the window. Max hadn't been longing for the past. He had been honoring the love he once knew, quietly watching over the widow of the man who raised him. Daniel crouched beside them. "He sits at the window every morning," he said. "At the same time. Waiting for you to walk by." The woman brought a hand to her heart. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered to Max, "you never forgot us, did you?" Max leaned closer, eyes filled with that gentle, loyal emotion Daniel had come to recognize. Daniel felt his throat tighten. The woman looked up at him. "Thank you," she said softly. "For loving him. For giving him a home." Daniel shook his head. "No," he replied gently. "He gave me one." They stayed like that for a while, 3 lives connected in the quiet warmth of a morning that held more meaning than any of them expected. The truth had finally revealed itself. And it was beautiful. The next morning felt different. Not mysterious. Not uncertain. Just full in the warm, gentle way that comes when truth has settled into the heart. Daniel woke early, not out of curiosity this time, but out of anticipation. He wanted to be part of the moment now, not just observing, not guessing, but sharing. He moved softly down the hallway and stepped into the living room. Max was there, of course. But he wasn't sitting with that deep, searching focus anymore. He was calm, content, grounded. Almost as if the weight he'd been quietly carrying had finally rested somewhere safe. Daniel smiled. "Hey, buddy, ready for another morning walk?" Max's tail brushed the rug in a soft, warm rhythm. Daniel sat next to him on the floor, taking a moment to breathe in the peace of the room. The early sunlight painted golden lines across the carpet. A faint breeze lifted the curtains just enough to let fresh air in. It all felt whole. "You know," Daniel murmured, "I think you were waiting for more than her walking by. You were waiting for me to understand." Max leaned his head lightly against Daniel's shoulder, a gesture filled with quiet agreement. Daniel rubbed his back gently. "Well, I do now." Minutes later, Daniel clipped on Max's leash and opened the front door. The cool morning air brushed against them as they stepped outside. The street was quiet. Birds perched on the power lines. A few early risers watered their lawns. Everything carried a peaceful, lived-in familiarity. As they approached the corner where the woman usually came into view, Daniel felt Max slow, then sit calmly at his side. "You want to wait for her here?" Daniel asked softly. Max gave a tiny huff, the gentle kind, full of warmth. So they waited. Together. After a few minutes, the soft tapping of a cane echoed from around the curve of the sidewalk. The elderly woman appeared, walking slowly but steadily, wrapped in her gray coat and soft scarf. She noticed them immediately. Her face lit up. "Oh, good morning," she said warmly. Daniel smiled back. "Good morning. We thought we'd meet you out here today." Max stood, tail swaying in that slow, loving motion that belonged only to her. The woman knelt carefully, steadying herself as Max pressed his forehead against her hand, the same affectionate greeting he'd offered her husband years ago. "There you are, sweetheart," she murmured. "I used to wonder if you'd forgotten us, but you never did." Max leaned closer, eyes warm and soft. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest, a sense of closure settling in. Not an ending. A connection restored. The woman stayed there with Max for a long, quiet moment. Her hand brushed through his fur with tenderness shaped by years of memory. "He was such a comfort to my husband," she said softly. "He stayed with him, every day, even near the end." Daniel nodded gently. I'm glad he had that kind of love. She smiled at Daniel, a smile full of gratitude. And I'm glad he has yours now. Daniel looked down at Max, who gazed up with eyes full of calm devotion. It's easy, Daniel said. He's a gift. The woman stood slowly, and Max stayed close, walking beside her for a few steps as if guiding her path. Daniel walked with them. They moved in quiet companionship, 3 lives, once distant, now connected by the soft threads of memory and gentle loyalty. As they reached the woman's house a few blocks away, she paused at the walkway. You're welcome to stop by any time, she said kindly. I think it would do us both good. Daniel smiled. We'd love that. Max looked up at him, tail moving in a small, grateful wag. The woman bent down once more. I'm so happy you found a good life, Max, she whispered. He'd be happy too. Max pressed his nose against her wrist, soft, slow, respectful. Then she walked toward her door, and Max watched her with the same gentle reverence he'd shown through the window. Only now, he wasn't waiting in silence. He was walking in the open, surrounded by understanding. Daniel crouched beside him. You feel lighter, he whispered. I can see it. Max leaned against him. The morning sun warmed the sidewalk. Birds hopped across the lawn. The air carried the quiet promise of a peaceful day. Daniel scratched Max's ear and let out a soft breath. You were longing, he said. You were loving. Max gave a gentle exhale, the kind Daniel had learned to interpret as yes. Together, they began the walk back home, slow, peaceful, side by side. No mystery now. Only meaning. Only connection. Only a dog who remembered love, and a man who learned to understand it. When they reached the house, Max paused at the window, not to wait, but to look out with quiet gratitude. Daniel stood beside him. Feels different now, doesn't it? He whispered. Max's tail brushed the rug. Daniel rested a hand over Max's warm fur. Whatever he taught you, whatever she gave you, you carried it with you. And I'm honored you shared it with me. Max pressed his face into Daniel's palm. And in the peaceful light of a new morning, Daniel realized something. Love doesn't fade. It simply finds new places to live. For Max, that place was here. For Daniel, it was Max. And together, they watched the soft world outside, not waiting for anything, just appreciating the beauty already found.